What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Echoes, a Notre Dame podcast. Mike, Golic Jr. and Jessica Smetana with you as always. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us wherever you get your podcast. Go ahead and hit subscribe, hit the bell on the YouTube channel, and, of course, follow us on all social media at the Echoes ND Pod. Coming off the bye week, which means, once again, we get to feel fantastic. Jess, over the weekend, I know you were at a wedding, and I'm excited to hear about the cookie table experience. We've got Boston College coming up this week. We're going to do some not quite mid-season, but homestretch superlatives for the Irish as we do some self-scouting the same way the team does during the bye week and using that time well. But I was on the call this last weekend for Kansas State, Kansas, big-time rivalry matchup, Sunflower Showdown, first time getting to cover that. And I was reminded how awesome it is to get to watch high-stakes, intense rivalry football when you don't care who wins and you have no skin in the outcome. Because, man, we needed the breather after that USC experience. And so getting it in this form and getting to just enjoy college football as a neutral observer, a joy this weekend.
And how much more did you enjoy it knowing Notre Dame beat their rival last weekend? Because I had a moment where I was drinking a martini on the dance floor this past weekend, and I just thought, I am so much happier right now than I could have been if that weekend's game did not go that way.
100%. It's the same reason as a player you understand, hey, if I've got a bye coming up and I've got a big game before that, or really any game, my performance during that is going to dictate how much we get to enjoy the bye as a player. It's usually an extra day off mixed in there. Coach is probably going to take the pads off you. The three best words in any football player's life, if you're a guy playing, young guy scrimmage. You get to go and sit back and watch freshmen and sophomores beat the shit out of each other on the practice field. So you had the dance floor martini version of that, which is absolutely 100% true.
Is that the college equivalent of vets day off?
Yes, that's like Mike Tomlin always called the vets the leak squad in Pittsburgh, the guys that were leaking oil. And you just see when I was in training camp with them, it's like Ryan Clark and Ben Roethlisberger and all these guys just sitting on their helmets over on the side talking about the million plays they've made for this team, watching all of us fight for our jobs like the Hunger Games. So yeah, it is 100% that version. It's incredible.
I love that. Well, full cookie table review. It was excellent. A+. They set up the cookies at the cookie table on replica Roberto Clemente bridges, Mike. It was the most Yinzer thing I've ever seen in my life. The cookies were, of course, delicious. We were all in awe. It was spectacular. There were probably, I want to say, maybe 15 different varieties. And my cousin told me they baked over 220 dozen cookies. And of course, they had takeout bags and boxes for us. So we brought some home for our pet sitter, for ourselves, of course. It was really great. And I think you would even enjoy this part more. At one point, the DJ got on the mic during the reception and said, "Hey, guys, there's pierogi next to the coffee." And they brought out a freshly catered tray of pierogi and they smelled incredible. So it was a really great Pittsburgh wedding. And I'm very happy for my cousin. And I'm honestly more happy for myself that I got to enjoy it after a USC win.
Oh, that's brings a tear to my eye. Late night pierogi at a Pittsburgh wedding. You're right. You lived the quintessential Yinzer experience in this weekend. Absolutely fantastic. So glad that you got to enjoy that. We hope everyone had a safe, wonderful, refreshing bye, basking in the glow of beating USC for what could be the final time for a while here. We will take a look ahead at Boston College in a bit. It's a 1-7 team that Notre Dame should handle thoroughly. This is the portion of the schedule that for Notre Dame becomes very important. As we know, no margin for error in terms of the college football playoff. Notre Dame, number 12 in the most recent AP poll. And as I'm sure fans are acutely aware of in this day and age, the college football playoff committee's rankings are going to come out starting next month. And that 12 spot is usually the cursed spot because the highest ranked group of 5 champion ends up making it to the college football playoff. And so that would knock Notre Dame out if they were at the 12 spot there. So work to do, the portion of the schedule that tests your maturity. And so we'll look ahead to that in a bit, but we thought it could be a fun opportunity to sort of look back the same way, like I mentioned, bye weeks when you're inside the building, it is get the young guys some work, get everyone healthy, but also let's go back and self-scout. Let's go back and watch us the way that an opponent would watch us, see what we notice, see what comes up, strengths, weaknesses, all that. And so we want to do a little bit of that here with some superlatives so far through the course of the season. Take a look back at what we've had so far in a Notre Dame year that's given us a ton. So, Jess, I guess Easiest one to start off with here would probably, as we look back on 2025 so far, biggest surprise, and Lord knows there's been plenty of them. So is it the obvious answer here? Where do you want to go with this?
I'll take the obvious answer and say CJ Carr, but I did struggle with this because I wanted to include another player who I thought I'm not surprised that he's as good as he is, but it is still someone who's had a significant impact for being a first-year starter. But let me start with CJ Carr because, Mike, going into the season, we said in our first episode, we kind of thought he'd be the starter. But then as camp went on, there were reports that he was throwing a lot of interceptions to the other player, who is my other biggest surprise, Tay Johnson, by the way. And we weren't even sure if he was going to be named the starter going into week 1 against Miami. So CJ Carr, I think, to me, has been the biggest surprise. Not that he inevitably became the starter of the football team, but or the starting quarterback of the football team, but because he has been so good from the jump. I do wish there was some way we could time travel and tell Mike Denbrock just let him rip in game 1 against Miami, because I think he would have been ready for that. But he's been a surprise in that player that went from, is he going to play or is Kenny Minchey going to play, to just he's being named to all of the quarterback watch lists. He's had some incredible throws that we've chronicled on this podcast. He's obviously become a leader of this offense, and his skill level was as advertised as a recruit, but we didn't necessarily know if he'd get to show that off this year.
No, I think it's a great reminder. It feels so long ago, the beginning of the season in a lot of ways, but the idea that this was a quarterback competition, and it seemed like an earnest one, not just, the way that people look at them in modern college football, wonder about the NIL implications. This seemed like a legitimate competition, to give way to your right, what's been one of the best quarterbacks in college football, period, regardless of class, regardless of experience going into it. So I'm with you, and I'm glad you mentioned Tay. He has probably been that guy on defense. The other name I kicked around, and I think it was more just because I was trying to find a place to talk about him. And again, based on what he'd already done at school, based on what he profiled as a recruit, Kingston Viliamu-Asa is not a guy that should surprise me, but coming into this year and working his way to now clearly, outside of Drake Bowen, being the second best linebacker on our team, being one of the most versatile pieces, a guy who can get after and rush the pass rusher. He's been so enjoyable to watch. He plays such a physical brand of football. He is a tone setter for that defense. So I wanted to give him some love, but man, it is hard to look away from CJ Carr and Tay Johnson, just because these aren't guys that had seen the field before for Notre Dame. And now both of them being impact players on either side of the ball has really changed the game for the Irish this season.
Yeah, and I also saw Tay Johnson was named to the Athletic midseason all-freshman team, which I love. And he's a player that he didn't have a lot of snaps against Miami, Mike. And now it's hard to picture the defense without him, especially after the USC game. So love the Kingston shout out. I mean, he's also a true sophomore. So all three of these players are first or second year players that don't have a ton of combined experience, which I think, bodes very well for the future.
You think about Tate too, like, you're right. That was one of the hallmarks of last year's defense. When you looked up and down, the injuries compounding late, as you said, oh, wow, there's a lot of young guys getting meaningful experience in high leverage reps. This year, a lot of it came early. A lot of the bumps and bruises came around the Purdue game that felt like the low water mark around the 2-minute draw of that game for so many reasons. And Tay, the role they asked him to play in USC, they said be Xavier Watts, right? Like, Adon Schuler was down there in coverage, and Tay was back deep on a lot of those reps, playing that middle of the field, last line of defense guy. So awesome stuff, awesome group, guys that I'm sure we'll talk about more as this goes along. Let's go and whittle it down even more, Jess. Best touchdown or best play of the season so far for you? Lots to choose from. What do you got?
There's so much to choose from, but I think it has to be Jadarian Price's kickoff return touchdown against USC. And Mike, we completely failed in not mentioning Noah Eagle's call when Jadarian Price did return the touchdown. Did you hear the touchdown call?
Was it Jadarian to Ja House?
It was, which is one of either the worst or best touchdown calls I've ever heard in my life. I'm not sure which, but I did feel like we really whiffed on not mentioning that last week, but total game changer. We talked about it last week. It came right after USC scored a touchdown and 2-point conversion. It completely flipped the game. It was like deja vu. Made Marcus Freeman believe in God. So I had to say Jadarian to the house for the kickoff return touchdown against USC.
I think it's a great reminder, too. We really did not spend enough time as a general culture realizing Marcus Freeman had a legitimate religious experience on the sideline because of JD. So that's awesome. I went back, just with all the stakes in that one, be hard pressed to push away elsewhere. I look back, the only other one that registered on the Richter scale in a similar way for me was the first touchdown pass of CJ Carr's career, the winding touchdown that we got the Wario version of during the USC game, but that announced his presence, showed the moxie, was one of the first plays that we saw CJ make, albeit in a loss on the road, but the one where he showed with the resolve, all the moxie and different quarterback, cliches that we want to throw out that have been proven true with him, first showed up in that moment where you kind of saw him go back to the sideline with that smirk that's become such a hallmark for him and showed you he wasn't afraid of anything.
It also showed that he works outside of the pocket a little bit because, that was another thing that we were a little surprised about, especially in the Miami game, was how much he was on his feet in that game. And I think Notre Dame's gotten away from that a little bit. And, he did score a touchdown against USC, but they haven't wanted to run CJ Carr very much, which understandable. But so that was also a surprise that he was so creative in that play. And we didn't have to do what we did last season, which was the Riley Leonard touchdown pass countdown, which became very annoying as he continued to score on his feet. But everyone that wanted to see him score with his arm waited and waited for that to happen. So we got that one out of the way, which was also great for narrative purposes.
Yeah, that was huge. The Purdue game became very uncomfortable in 2024 for that reason, as the backup started to notch the touchdowns that had eluded him there. Let's go in that light. Best touchdown celebration, since that's, I'll say right away, it's J-Love for me. The hump scene around the world. We talked to him on the Daily Show I Do with Dad, and he said, I'm never doing that again. It wasn't what it was supposed to be, but people went and ran with it. I don't know what it was supposed to be. I'm not young enough to get the references anymore that a lot of these guys are pulling from, but either way, it was real. It was spectacular. It was mimicked by Kaman Spell, the top running back recruit that was the decommit from Penn State, who was seen at Notre Dame in that game as well, I think.
Well, actually, Mike, I thought when I saw a tweet that said Kaman Spell did the Jeremiah Love touchdown celebration, it was going to be the hump. And then I watched the video. Thank God. It was just the hearts. It was the hearts. I know.
That's what I get for headline reading. I was like, oh man, I don't need to see this high school kid pile driving the ground. I'm glad he took the more PG route.
He did. And also I do want to ding you because technically it wasn't a touchdown celebration. He did it after the victory formation, but I'll give it to you because it was one of the most memorable celebrations of the season. But I have a different one, actually. Very under the radar touchdown celebration, because at first NBC's cameras cut away and missed it, and they had to show it, I think, going into a tease going into commercial. But Malachi Fields hit a backflip against Purdue after a 66-yard touchdown pass. One of those moments where it's like very cathartic to see Notre Dame score on a long touchdown pass. And then the reaction I had was, wow, that is incredible. He is huge and he's able to land a backflip. And then my second reaction was, I hope he doesn't do that again.
Yes. Yeah. It was a celebration so cool and so explosive. I immediately started worrying about health, considering the injury issues Notre Dame has had more along the trenches than necessarily in the wide receiver core outside of Jaden Greathouse, who's kind of been nursing a lingering hamstring for most of this season. But I'm with you. Malachi, in so many ways, has popped this year and represented a receiving archetype in that true big body X receiver that Notre Dame hasn't had or felt like it had in a while. That was cool as hell. Just to have one of the guys who can do the backflip. Like I've watched, I think Anthony Richardson used to be doing that at Florida.
Bryce Underwood did it this past weekend too. Like it's often done, but never by giant Notre Dame wide receivers. Like that's the first time I've seen a guy that big land it.
That is growth as a program. That show that right there. All you need to know about the way that Marcus Freeman and this outfit are recruiting right now at an incredibly high level. Jess, let's get to most improved. And I think this one has a lot of really interesting potential choices, including maybe the coaching staff. So what did you have for this?
So I debated Chris Ash or Adon Schuler, because Adon Schuler obviously struggled against Miami. It was worst game of the season. And then if you compare that performance to USC, it is like two different players almost. And Marcus has said he's the emotional captain of the defense and he's vitally important to what the defense wants to do. So I considered that, but I think in the larger context of the season, it kind of folds into the Chris Ash experience so far. So I remember after, I think it was the Arkansas game week 5, I was reading a Adam Rinberg story in ESPN about rating the coordinator hires of this past coaching cycle, and he had given Chris Ash a D+ grade, pretty much the worst graded coordinator at that point. And of course, it's coming off of the Miami and Texas A&M games where Notre Dame was not the defense that we expected to see. But since then, they have just improved so much. Right now, they're 21st in the country in rushing yards per game, allowing 100 yards and 3.2 yards per carry. They have 13 interceptions on the season, Mike, 15 total turnovers, which makes them the number 2 and 3 teams in those regards. Getting this from Matt Freeman's blog on Irish Sports Daily. And they're a top 10 ranked defense in DF+, which combines FEI and S&P+. So in the advanced stats, the production is showing up, and we have seen steady improvement throughout the season. So I'm going to just fold in Adon Schuler into the defense, into Chris Ash, which, we had many crises about early in the season, and now have consistently watched Notre Dame hold their opponents to their season lows in points per game, yards per game, all the statistics where you can just look across. You can just do the math on your own. You can look across all of the games and all the common opponents and see Notre Dame has really improved as just totally in this unit as a whole.
Yeah, it's been amazing to watch. And I don't know what went into it, right? I don't know if it was a conscious conversation between Marcus Freeman and the staff talking about the way they wanted to go and do this. Clearly, we saw, and this was a trend leading into that game, but in the most important game in the middle of Notre Dame's schedule, they went back to the exact game plan that made them great for so much of last year, which is we are going to play an overwhelming amount of sticky man coverage. We're going to go best on best. We're going to try and send extra bodies at the quarterback, which was light years away from the first 2 games of the season where it was this almost stubborn adherence to 4-man rush and playing more zone coverage and all these things that we'd heard about in the offseason. And so whatever that is, or if it was just Chris Ash learning more about his personnel and live reps and making that adjustment, either way, want to give him credit, because to have the humility as a coach to go and make those changes and adjustments based on what you came in with the prior plan, that's not typical. Like, not everybody is willing and able to make that kind of adjustment and do that. Certainly having a head coach that's defensive minded helps, having that as another set of eyes, ears, opinions to all bounce off of that are ultimately going to be able to put the thumb on the scale if he wants. But it's been damn impressive what they've authored since the Purdue game, really.
It has been. And also Rittenberg did give Mike Denbrock a C- grade last year after the first 5 or 6 games. So I think it also goes to show it's hard to grade a coordinator after only a few games of the season, because as we know, there are not enough data points sometimes to really determine what's going on. And we'll of course have more of a full review when the season ends on how the Chris Ash experience went. But I think he does deserve credit. And of course, Marcus Freeman and the players deserve a lot of that credit as well. Do you have a most improved, or are we going to just lump everything into the defense?
I think it certainly goes in that way, but in the interest of like shouting out guys that I have been impressed by, and this is caked in recency bias, but I think, being at your best when your best is required is like one of the ultimate football axioms. And Dallas Golden, that was a guy I was very unsure about going into the USC game, given what his role was going to be. Leonard Moore kicking down in the slot, handling Makai Lemon certainly changed the tenor of that. But there were still plenty of plays where I think you saw the benefit of some of the lumps that Dallas took early on, having to come in, getting pressed to duty, some of the changes they made in the secondary. And I thought he played by far his best ball of the season. I think the grades, we talked about this after USC, I think he had the second best coverage grade on the team behind like Drake Bowen at linebacker. So obviously some of that skewed, but among the secondary guys, he really popped there and seems like a guy that, you look at the way he's built. What an awesome player to start having come into his own, given how big, long, and rangy he can be in that secondary. But a guy that took his lumps early and now seems to be doing a lot better.
We also have a little bit of an agreement in the next category as well, with unsung hero. So I picked Jordan Faison for this because I think he's incredibly sung amongst Notre Dame fans. He's, of course, a national champion. We have talked many times about how adept he is at converting nice passes into first downs, and how he does it with his feet, and he's quick, and he's got great yards after contact, and he's just a very versatile player in the offense. And he just doesn't really get a lot of national attention. He's not putting up gaudy numbers. He's probably only averaging between 5 and 6 receptions a game. But he has 436 yards on the season and 2 touchdowns. And I think he is just an unsung hero in the offense. I can't really picture the offense without him. So I wanted to also give him a little bit of a shout out here, because I think as a whole, Notre Dame's receivers a little unsung hero-y, but Faison in particular really helps this offense keep humming.
Listen, in any offense, the quarterback's the most important, and we know in Notre Dame's the running back room is next. But outside of those three in the backfield, he is the most important offensive piece for Notre Dame. He's the only wide receiver that I trust on a money down to run short of the sticks. Like, in football, every other time you're pissed off when you see a wide receiver or someone run the route short of the sticks. And when Faison does it, he has my trust, because he has proven time and time again, the first tackler is never going to get that guy down. And usually the second tackler isn't either.
That is a great point. And also a skill set that I think in today's NFL offenses is extremely important. And I imagine that will do well for him in the next phase.
Oh, in the next phase on. He's going to wind up in a Shanahan-McVay system because he blocks so well too, and he's going to play in the NFL for like 8 or 9 years, and it's going to be awesome. All right, last one here. Let's go. Midseason MVP. We could split it up in offense and defense, and it feels like there is a very obvious answer for both, but they deserve their flowers for the All-American seasons that they're in the midst of right now, Jess.
Yeah, midseason MVP on offense has to go to Jeremiah Love, of course, and on defense it has to be Leonard Moore. It's just a different team when those guys aren't on the field. And of course, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price together are a great tandem, but individually, we've talked about it before, probably the best running back in a long time at Notre Dame, going to be a very high draft pick. He's right now Mel Kiper's #1 running back in the next upcoming NFL draft. Jadarian Price, by the way, is his #3 at the moment. So, I mean, it's hard to mention one without mentioning the other, but yes. And Leonard Moore, of course, I don't know how much more, no pun intended, you can say about what he does defensively, and especially in last week's game against USC, playing more in the slot against Mekhi Lemon just shows how versatile he is as well. And he's just great. Like, it's just really hard to pass the ball where he is on the field if you're an opposing quarterback, because he might come up with it or he might make you look really bad.
By the way, I know we had a disagreement in the comments of one of our social medias about the nature of Leonard Moore's performance. But I actually, this last weekend, I was in coaches' meetings and asked a defensive coordinator about what it takes to be a great slot cornerback versus on the outside. And the biggest area for Leonard is there's just so much more space. There's different routes available to you in the slot, even in man coverage, where you'd think, ostensibly it's the same challenge if you're playing man coverage no matter where you are, but you don't have that sideline as an extra defender the way you do on the outside. It's not to say, hey, being a dominant outside corner is one of the most important things in football, but to do that in the slot where you've got much more of a two-way go, where you can go across the field, and to have the game that Lenny did. I'm with you. Like, I could argue he's the most impactful on his side of the ball, like even factoring Jeremiah Love in. We saw what happens to the defense when he's not out there, just erasing one defender at any given time on any given snap, and it is noticeable.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, should we wrap this up with just a prediction for who do you think will have a breakout end of the season, who we haven't mentioned yet? I have one player in mind. It's Eli Raridon. His best game was against NC State, and then USC was not his best game, but I also think there's extenuating circumstances. It wasn't CJ Carr's best game, certainly, and also it was raining and, just maybe not the right conditions to continue that streak. But I think given the quality of defense that Notre Dame's going to play down the stretch here, I do think he's poised to just continue what he was doing against NC State. And now Cooper Flanagan's back, Mike, which we didn't really talk about last weekend. He made his first appearance of the season, which I think if you're looking at some of the potential 2 tight end sets that Notre Dame could be doing, more like 12 personnel stuff, having Cooper Flanagan back, who's a very good blocker, probably helps Raridon and helps him get more receiving yards. I mean, he's a good blocker as well, which is obviously part of his skill set. But I don't know. I just think maybe now's the time. Maybe he kind of continues that little bit of a hot streak he started at NC State.
I'm with you. He's got the talent to do it. He's someone that I went back and saw a couple of, reps of his, I forget what game from 2024, but seeing how he moves now, how much more comfortable he is another year removed from injury out there on the field, and what a willing blocker he is, I'm with you. Sky's the limit for that dude. And now that you're right, Cooper Flanagan being back, massive for what this offense is capable of, knowing Mike Denbrock's history, coaching tight ends, having offenses that feature them. The other one I'd go on defense, Elijah Hughes, who's seen an uptick in his playing time going back to when Jared Dawson got dinged up a little bit. And now, since we know Gabe Rubio, who we should say his name as well, was Notre Dame's most
unsung
productive
hero
defense.
As well.
Notre Dame's best defensive tackle while he was healthy and on the field during the early portion of the year. Elbow injury now has him sidelined, which is really unfortunate. But 56 getting a lot more touches and is another guy, reminiscent of the last 56 we saw in Howard Cross, who may not measurably be one of the most dominant looking players that you've ever seen, but just finds a way to keep flash and color in the backfield. And so I think with an increased potential for reps, that's a guy I'm keeping an eye on down the home stretch.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the massive college football coaching news, how it might affect Notre Dame, and maybe we'll even mention the fact that Brian Kelly got fired. I don't know if you heard about that this past weekend, but Mike, of course, played for Brian Kelly, so I think you're going to want to stick around and hear some of his thoughts on that right when we come back.
Breakfast might be the most important choice you make all day. That's because with Wendy's 2 for $3 breakfast, you can mix and match your very own perfect pairing of our delicious morning favorites.
With this breakfast deal, the choice is all yours, not someone else's. And isn't that how it should be? It's your breakfast after all, not Martha's. She can pick her own breakfast. This one's all you.
No matter what you choose, from our sausage biscuit with that grilled breakfast sausage, or the egg and cheese biscuit with fresh cracked grade A egg and melty American cheese on a fluffy buttermilk biscuit, a small size of perfectly seasoned potatoes, or a medium hot coffee to power through the morning.
All you got to do is pick your ideal morning pair. You really can't lose because you're the one calling the shots. The choice is all yours. Wake up to Wendy's 2 for $3 breakfast, just the way you want it.
Limited time only during breakfast hours. U.S. price and participation may vary. No substitutions. Not valid in a combo. Single item at regular price.
Support for the Echoes comes from Google. We heard commentators talk about the spread offense all the time, but what if you don't know exactly what that means or what makes it different from other offensive schemes?
You can keep wondering or ask your friends and hope they know what they're talking about, or you can use AI mode in Google search.
You can just type, "Help me understand what a spread option offense is and why a football team would choose to run it." Yep, you can ask all of that in one search, and you'll get an organized and helpful AI-powered response with everything you need to know.
But it doesn't end there. Let's say you want to keep going deeper. With AI mode, you don't have to start a whole new search. You can just ask direct follow-ups like, break down how it compares to the pro-style offense based on overall philosophy, types of formations used, and pace. AI mode is great at these types of comparisons, giving you side-by-side analysis and helping you get the full story from one question to the next. So, if you don't just want to watch the game, but really want to understand it, you can just ask Google.
Welcome back to the Echoes podcast. So, Mike, Brian Kelly was fired by LSU on Sunday after losing to Texas A&M. Mike Elko's former defensive coordinator when he was at Notre Dame, losing to Clark League last weekend at Vanderbilt, his other former defensive coordinator when he was at Notre Dame. This is obviously a topic that Notre Dame fans are very fired up about. So I want to start by getting your perspective as someone who was not recruited by Brian Kelly, but of course played for Brian Kelly, played in the national championship game under Coach Brian Kelly. So what was your general reaction to hearing that he has been fired only 3.5 seasons into his tenure at LSU and is now going to be paid a massive $53 million buyout?
I shouldn't be surprised anymore. Well, I am, because we've seen this year, I feel like every offseason when we have these massive tectonic shifts in the coaching cycle, right? And this time having this job, Penn State, Florida, Steve Sarkisian having to shoot down rumors about interest in the NFL over the weekend. It's going to be a wild offseason in terms of the coaching names that move. And that usually comes with the massive buyout figures. And we've seen it written about in the past. And with all the different monetary forces pulling at college football, so many people wondered, hey, would we be done with paying coaches this much money to do nothing? And this offseason showed you, no, the winning matters more than anything else. And the only reason I was somewhat surprised is we had seen Brian Kelly in the past, when forced into a corner, 4-8 season at Notre Dame, come out on the other side of that, making the necessary changes when given the opportunity. And I thought, combined with his entire track record, combined with the massive buyout, would LSU just use this as a point to go in? And kind of what we heard the reports of them doing, right? The athletic director and Brian Kelly getting into a disagreement over changes on the staff that needed to be made in the wake of that Texas A&M rivalry. I thought that was how it was going to go. And so to see them now show him the door, I thought my biggest takeaway from that was, the standard, and I don't mean this to be demeaning to Notre Dame fan, but this is the reality. The standard there is different. Like, the last 3 coaches won national championships in their 4th year at that school. We know the reasons Brian Kelly left in terms of the resources, the recruiting in your own backyard, what had gone on there. And so the fact that after a 3-loss stretch in the middle of year 4, they said, no, this isn't going to work. And maybe things are going on behind the scenes, but Notre Dame, because of the massive national championship drought when Brian was there, and no small part the fact that, hey, went to the national championship in year 3, my 5th year senior year, got that grace when push came to shove during a season that, 4-8, there would have been no shot. There would have been no question if in Baton Rouge they wound up 4-8 at the end of this season somehow, or had gone that way, he would have surely been fired. And so Notre Dame had the ability to have patience in that spot and was rewarded with it based on where they were in the program life cycle at that point, coming off some lean years. At LSU, they made it abundantly clear, this is how long you get, because we believe everyone who walks into the door down here is set up to win a national championship, and their history bears it out.
Yeah, and a couple of those coaches also got fired too. So it is definitely a much different situation. They have a different appetite for hiring and firing coaches than I think Notre Dame would have in that situation. But to your point, I think, yeah, it's hard to really even compare where we're at right now in college football with where college football was in 2016 when Brian Kelly did have that sort of like come to Jesus postseason with Notre Dame, where I think hard conversations were had. And he, to his credit, turned it around after that.
Yeah.
I think where it comes into what comes to mind as a Notre Dame fan is just the sort of way that Brian Kelly went about leaving Notre Dame. Ultimately, I think he was at a point where fans had put up with a lot when it comes to some of his antics and the screaming on the sidelines and like the things that were like a little embarrassing and the comments and the attempts to be funny at times that really like rubbed people the wrong way. And I think fans were accepting of that because he did take them to the playoff multiple times after that 2016 season and had put so many players in the NFL and was doing a really good job hiring coordinators and doing the things that a head coach needs to do to have a winning program. But the problem was Notre Dame could never get over the hump of beating those quote unquote super teams like Clemson in 2018 and Alabama in 2020. And those teams don't really exist anymore. If you look at some of the data, there has been more of a flattening, at least like in the preliminary returns on this season, especially where the best teams in the country are still better than, the bottom whatever teams in the country by a significant margin. But if you look at like the 5th through 25th ranked teams in S&P Plus or even in FEI, Mike, they're a lot closer together and a lot closer to the number 1 through 5 teams than they have been historically. So I think it is just a completely different era. And LSU did feel like they went all in this offseason to put the resources behind the team. It wasn't really a situation where they felt like, okay, now next year we got to do, like, they had spent a lot of money on this team and they had brought back Garrett Nussmeier, who was considered a potential first round pick in the NFL draft next year at quarterback. So I understand the disappointment and the frustration, but it is really difficult to just compare where we're at now to where we even were in 2021 when he left Notre Dame, when the NIL and portal stuff had sort of just really started opening up.
No, it's a great point, and it makes it hard to apples and apples a lot of this. I guess overall, and I know Notre Dame fans have a lot of complicated feelings about Brian Kelly, and I get it. I'm still surprised by how this went, because I thought when you look at Brian Kelly and just give like the most honest, straight down the middle assessment, he's a coach that knows how to, or through my experience, again, I played 3 years for the guy, knows how to set the expectation for every day for what everyone in the building needs to be doing. Like, walked in and immediately knew why he wanted things, because we know he had the track record of success going back to Grand Valley, going back to Cincinnati, all the stops in between. You saw that, you felt that, and it makes your life easier as a player. And so I expected, with all these changes going on, this is still someone that knows. I mean, everyone labeled him that CEO archetype. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would fit well at LSU, given all of the advantages that they've got financially, recruiting wise, that even in a change in era, I thought, okay, this is a place that, cares about it at a high level, is going to be serious about it in all the ways that you need to be going forward. So I think we'll learn a lot in the coming week. I mean, the postmortem and the articles that usually come out after that from the people locally around these programs that are usually kind of holding back a lot of this stuff until something like this happens could be telling as to where it ultimately went wrong in the midst of all this change, coinciding with the move that he thought was going to be the way to the national championship that eluded him so far.
Right. That's exactly why I think it's interesting as a Notre Dame fan to consider. I think Notre Dame's 2024 season was the ultimate antidote to what Notre Dame fans could be feeling right now. Like I think Notre Dame fans feel like we are as a whole in a better position with Marcus Freeman as the head coach, but I don't think Marcus Freeman could have been successful if Brian Kelly hadn't done some of the things that he did consistently over a long period of time. But I think that Brian Kelly obviously made a lot of comments that rubbed Notre Dame fans the wrong way when saying that he was leaving Notre Dame because LSU had a better cafeteria. And have you seen the Goog lately? They gave us box lunches and we have shitty food. And I think it really was, he took a lot of, I think, slightly unnecessary shots out the door. So I don't think Notre Dame fans are really feeling sorry for him, but I do think that it is a really tough business. And I think ultimately what will determine my long-term feelings on this is if there is any sort of head coaching movement on Notre Dame's behalf because of this now extremely accelerated coaching carousel season. There's Penn State is open, LSU is open, Florida's open, Oklahoma State's open. There's UCLA has an interim coach right now. Like there's so many Power Four teams that have fired their coaches and it's not even November yet, Mike. We talked about this last week or maybe the week before when James Franklin was fired. Notre Dame's got coordinators that I don't think have really popped up on any of these lists. We don't really picture Mike Denbrock leaving. Don't really know. I mean, Chris Ash, who that the jury's out on the whole Chris Ash thing right now still. But there's a number of great assistants that you wouldn't want to see Mike Pickens leave or Max Bola or any of the other position coaches. And of course, there's Marcus Freeman, who is probably going to be in the news cycle for the next however many weeks, because if Notre Dame keeps winning, he's just a really attractive head coaching hire. He's 39 years old, and we obviously, Notre Dame fans don't want to see him leave. So I don't know. All of this is to say, we'll see how it ends up. I still think that Marcus Freeman, if you believe what he says, he's very happy at Notre Dame, and there's probably only a handful of things that he would consider instead of Notre Dame. And he just played for a national title last year, which is the thing that Brian Kelly said that he couldn't do at Notre Dame. Like he couldn't actually win it. And I think Notre Dame could have actually won it last year. So it's different times, yes, but I'm also eager to see how this whole thing shakes out.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's always my first fear, especially when a job, because I mean, LSU immediately becomes the number one job available on the board. I don't think it's a particularly difficult conversation. And his name, I'm sure, could be linked to that the same way it was linked to Florida, the same way it was linked to Penn State. And, I'm sure, I don't know, it does not benefit Marcus to come out and say anything definitive because this is a leverage point. And if there are still things that he wants done around there, and listen, they're getting a brand new football facility for the players to replace the aforementioned Goog, which, when I got there in 2008, the Goog was brand new in 2005 when like Brady Quinn and all those guys were, doing their thing there. And so it was still new for us then, but you go around and you look at other facilities in the country and it was dated. They were due for this upgrade and now they're getting it. They got the upgraded indoor. The stadium got the facelift in 2017. There's all these areas, but behind the scene, I for the rest of it, there's, I'm sure, always more you feel like you could want and get as a coach. And this is an opportunity where if Marcus really does want that, he's going to have the interest and leverage to do that. And so I'll be curious to watch how that plays out. We know he just signed the extension last year. Everything that you mentioned is, but you're right, even further down the coaching staff, the butterfly effect of these kind of coaching cycles that is going to push and pull coaches all over the place that could wind up with some of those people that have been important in the entirety of the staff is always a risk and a possibility. So it does always kind of make me a little nervous when this starts happening.
Definitely. And I never thought Brian Kelly would leave Notre Dame the way that he did. So I don't think you can ever really, never say never, I suppose.
Sure.
But I think, yes, this is sort of like a money talk situation. And if Notre Dame is going to fully support Marcus Freeman in a financial sense in every way, not just with salary, but with, NIL and all of the things that go into it, it will be telling it will be telling at the end of this coaching cycle.
And you know what? So far through this era, they have given me no reason to believe that that won't be the case. Like, so far through the NIL era, through all of the changes, Notre Dame has played ball in a way that I quite frankly wasn't sure they were going to. And they've stepped up to the plate, and they have given Marcus and this program the things they need to be successful. And so I see no reason why at this point Notre Dame won't continue that pattern to make sure that he is our coach for a good long time.
Yes. Well, when we get back from the break, we will talk about Boston College, a rivalry game, I suppose, for Notre Dame. Finally has a kickoff time, Mike, which, by the way, why would you ever want to join a conference? If you're finding out the kickoff time 6 days before, I mean, I just don't understand it. But we'll talk about that when we get back from the break, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other games Notre Dame will be playing down the stretch here.
At the Echoes ND Pod, where you can see all of our fun clips from the show. We're on TikTok, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. It's great. We're having an awesome time. The YouTube comment section, by the way, if we could just shout them out, has become a really wonderful place.
It is.
Some genuinely nice conversations, some great comments. We read them, we appreciate them, we reply as often as we can.
Unlike the TikTok comment section, which told us that we don't know how to talk ball because we said Leonard Moore played out of position against USC, Mike, which you alluded to earlier, but I just thought I'd close the loop on that.
Yeah, no, TikTok's still a place that I'm fully wrapped in. As a millennial on that website, I've always felt a bit unwelcome, but I'm slowly getting my sea legs there. So we'll see. Jess has been doing a phenomenal job on TikTok. If you're not following her over there during the course of college football season, plenty of good stuff that usually makes its way to our page as well. Jess, let's look ahead. Boston College this weekend, 1-7. Their only win against FCS Fordham. This has not been a banner year for BOB and the bunch up there. Thomas Castellanos on the way, left on the way out there, and in his wake, a team that I thought he took some unnecessary shots at. Unfortunately, has not gone out and defended themselves overly well. Notre Dame almost a 30-point favorite in this game. So this another one that falls into the line of, hey, you've got to go out here and prepare each week in a way that's consistent and allows you to have success. It's more about us than it is about them. Every one of those cliches, I'm sure, being said across the Goog this week.
Yes, Boston College, like you mentioned, they lost to UConn a couple of weeks ago, have lost to all the Power 4 teams that they've played. And in those games, excluding Fordham, they've allowed almost 40 points per game. Just a really bad defense overall. So it is a game where I just think Notre Dame should just stick to what they're good at, run the ball a lot, score early. I think it's going to be a heavy Irish crowd. The tickets to this game were sold out when I looked into going. This was in June, by the way, when the tickets were sold out. I was looking into going to the game because it's not too far from New York City. And my boyfriend actually went to BU, Mike, which is a rival of Boston College. So we kind of share that in common. Although I don't know, like Notre Dame is a rival of Boston College, but at the same time, it's not. There's a trophy, right? I mean, that counts. So
there's a trophy for this game. Like, we've got a million trophies, which, I know a lot of people give us grief about. Notre Dame Purdue also, like, one of the most off-played of those rivalries as well. But Notre Dame Purdue, Notre Dame BC, not necessarily in that realm, but I don't know. There's been a lot of shots taken over the years, the backup college jokes, all those different things. I will say that stadium in particular holds the smell of alcohol as well as any I ever played at, because it's so metallic. You walk down in there, and I remember going through on the sidelines, because when I was a freshman, Charlie Weiss would travel people close to home, even if you were a redshirt guy, just to get that road experience. So I got to travel on the road to Boston College and just was overwhelmed by how much that stadium reeked of booze playing a night game there. And, the history of this rivalry, I mean, they've had some great players over the years, even when it wasn't necessarily the most competitive, between
Matt
Luke
Ryan
Kuechly,
and Luke Kuechly.
Mark Herzlich, too, who before he had, went through his bout of cancer, was the best college football player on defense I had seen in college. That man was 7 foot tall, and I think caught more passes from our quarterbacks in that game. That game at BC than any receiver on our team. So there's been some great guys. Unfortunately, right now, it's just not in a place where there's much of a rivalry feel because of how it's been on the field lately.
Should we start Brian Kelly to Boston College rumors?
Man, who says you can't go home? Amherst's very own coming back to the nest.
Assumption, I thought.
Or Assumption, that's right.
Yeah, just a name, small school.
Yeah.
It's fine. We'll Edit this out. Just kidding. Okay, Mike. And in the spirit of Halloween, which I always loved Halloween at Notre Dame, Club Fever on Thursdays, Finney's on Fridays, CJ's on Saturday. What game scares you the most in the second half of the season for Notre Dame?
There's only one real answer for this, right? It's been the same answer since the dawn of time. It's the Pitt super weapon. Like, as someone that almost watched the perfect season go up in smoke, down multiple touchdowns to Pitt at home, this is always a scary team, especially for them, though they've been a much better team since the quarterback change. I think since Mason took over, he's thrown for over 300 yards in all but one game.
He had 450 yards against NC State on homecoming on Saturday for Pitt, Mike. So I am thinking of going to this game. I can't decide. The last time I went to the Pitt Notre Dame game at Pittsburgh, Notre Dame won by a jillion points in 2015. But the time before that was the Stephon Tuitt targeting game in 2013, which was a terrible game. So I do have some mixed feelings about attending games in that stadium. But I'm with you. I think Pitt statistically is the best defense Notre Dame will face the second half of the season. They're a top 30 defense. I think the next closest is Navy, perhaps. I think I'd put Navy in the category of like, ooh, spooky Halloween, because it is Chris Ash's first time getting the defense ready for a Navy game. It is oddly a 7:30 game on NBC coming up in a few weeks, which is definitely weird. Notre Dame has a third night game this year, and it is the Midshipmen. But I think you're right. I think the fact that Notre Dame's playing on the road at Pitt, I don't think that has a kickoff time yet either, because again, why would you ever join a conference? But if Notre Dame can get by that one, I think, Stanford on the road, it's going to be a big Notre Dame crowd there, I imagine. They are a weird team. They always beat someone way better than them, at least at one point. But these are all teams that, like you said, it's a mental thing. Notre Dame's got to take care of their own business in these games.
Navy is an interesting one, too, just playing the resume game for Notre Dame as we get closer to the first round of playoffs. Right now, Navy ranked inside the top 25. Right now, Navy still sitting as one of the undefeateds in college football. They do play North Texas this weekend, who's been one of the better group of five teams this year, and their quarterback just threw for over 600 yards in a game. They're the perfect antidote for what you need to beat a Navy team. If you can hit big plays consistently, make them play from behind, all those things generally tend to bode well against a lot of the academies, even though more of them are using passing elements in the offense and more spread stuff than in the past because of all the rules that have threatened the triple over the recent years. But so they could get dinged there, or if they come in off the ride for that, even better, probably we get a little bit of bump in the rankings and could be another resume booster for Notre Dame. But I'm with you. Like, the triple always scares the hell out of me, and you have the fear going into that always, which maybe less so now again because of some of the rule changes. You're just praying to God you walk out of that healthy. Like, every year we played them, it is a different week because you're going in and practicing an offense that's so foreign for the rest of the year, and you're also just praying to God no more of your defensive starters go out with a season-ending injury, as can happen against the cutting.
While we're on that note, playing at Acrisure Stadium on that field, also an injury concern. I don't know if you've seen it lately, Mike, but it is not a very nice playing surface at the moment. They did resod it, I believe, last week after the terrible condition it was in against I can't remember which game it was, but yeah, it's just not been looking good.
No, my dad was on the call for Sunday Night Football this past week when Pittsburgh hosted Green Bay. So I am going to be asking him for the full. I told him, go walk around down on the field, maybe take a sample or two. I need all of the information humanly possible about whatever sod they just rolled in.
Absolutely. Oh God, yeah. Pitt and Narduzzi are always a little spooky around Halloween time, Mike.
Definitely. That feels like the spookiest bunch there. Jess, before we head on the way out here, I guess as we look at college football in the big picture right now, we mentioned the AP poll rankings, they're all fine. We'll get the CFP reaction soon here in a couple of weeks, and we'll get a better sense of where Notre Dame's going to be. And there's still so much football to be played, so many teams above them that we've seen lose already, could lose in the future. But as you look at it right now, a lot of people and metrics will point to Notre Dame as one of the teams playing the best ball in the sport right now, certainly in a lot of ways look like the top 10 team they were to start the season. Do you have a clear view of who you think like the top 5 teams in the sport are right now?
I would say definitely Ohio State and Texas A&M are my 1 and 2 right now. I would put Indiana at number 3 and Alabama at number 4, even though that I think that Florida State loss just looks worse and worse by the second, Mike.
Yeah.
But since we're saying Texas A&M is a top 2 team, I think the team that only lost to them by 1 point has got to be in your top 5, and that's, of course, Notre Dame. So I think in like some of this advanced statistics, Notre Dame is like a top 6, top 5 team. They're not in the AP poll, obviously, because they do have 2 losses. Although I did see USC crept back into the AP poll after their bye weekend this weekend, which is also good for Notre Dame. But I think I could also put Georgia up there. But I think if you're going to say Texas A&M is one of the best teams, Notre Dame's got to be close to that. If you're just ranking off of like vibes and like power ranking them and not doing like an actual like college football playoff draft or whatever.
Yeah, like who's playing the best right now. I think a lot of people would certainly put them in that conversation. I had a similar group. I had IU up at 2. I think they've been consistent. I think they've got the better quarterback of those 2 teams. Marcel Reed's looked better and better as the season's gone along, is already a really good player coming off the back half of last year. But I just think Fernando Mendoza is like, number 1 overall pick in the draft good right now.
Yeah.
Ohio State, the defense is giving up less than a touchdown per game. I think they're literally averaging 5.5 points allowed right now. It's disgusting.
And they could go, I mean, if they beat Michigan, which is a humongous if, they could go into the Big Ten championship without having any ranked wins on their schedule, because Texas is, I mean, they almost lost to Mississippi State, had to take it to overtime, almost lost to Kentucky, had to take it to overtime. Illinois probably not going back up in the rankings. And of course, Michigan, if Michigan lost to Ohio State, would not be finishing in the top 25. So that's even crazier. And also something you can tell your friends when they're like, who is Notre Dame even beaten? Well, last year, Texas didn't really have any great ranked wins going into the college football playoff. And this year, that team might be Ohio State, even though we all know that they're good. I'm not saying that they're bad. It's just how the scheduling works in a mega conference.
It's the inverse in the way it's perceived of Indiana last year, right? Who did get those questions all year about playing nobody. And then, the first round result didn't help for them. But Ohio State doing that this year, coming off a national championship run, doing it with the usual stock of blue chip talent that we've become accustomed there, you're given a little bit more benefit of the doubt than at that point, year 1, Kurt Cignetti in Indiana, who now I think is at the point where, they're getting the national respect they're owed for the consistency over the last couple of years. So same top 4 outside of that. I'd throw Oregon in there as well. I still think on their best day, talent-wise, coaching-wise, there's a lot to like there. I know how close that Penn State game was. Hasn't aged well, but I do still think at the time, like given the circumstances, that's a good win.
That's like a weird one to try to grade at this point in the season because of the Penn State implosion afterwards. But yeah, Oregon still has to play Washington, who's obviously looking good.
Who needs to be ranked, by the way? That's disgusting that they're not in the top 25. I don't get it.
USC and then Iowa. I mean, Oregon, Iowa. What a nasty Big Ten rivalry that is. And also Dan Lanning, another coach, and Will Stein too. 2 coaches that I'm like, are they going to be swept up in this whole coaching carousel? They're obviously like super, super hot coaching candidates, Mike, the OC and the head coach for Oregon. So, man, this is going to be a really interesting second half to the season because Ole Miss, obviously Lane Kiffin's been rumored to have like every job coming up in this coaching cycle, but they're playing really well. They just beat Oklahoma in a really, really tough game. All of these coaches that you're seeing their names out there, like not all of them, but the majority of them are still very much in the college football playoff race, which did not stop Brian Kelly in 2021, to be clear. But it is still very interesting to consider that and consider how this all may shake out.
It's going to be incredible. Strap in. It's going to be a fun finish to the season. We'll be here every step of the way, every Tuesday, as we always are. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Check us out on YouTube. All that fun stuff. Thanks so much. Go Irish.